Thanks for checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board. If you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and you can check out all of my work, including the 2022 Rookie Big Board at patreon.com/theFFeducator. This is an introduction to the 2022 rookie running back class. Yes, the running back class that for it seems like a full year now has been getting slammed for not being talented enough and not injecting enough value into this 2022 class overall. So I'm excited to get into it and give you my top 9 running backs here that I believe at this point in time highlight the running back class. And I think based on the narrative that you may have been hearing out there, you may be surprised how excited I am on this class. After I go through my top 9 guys in the class, I will also pull up the all-time rookie big board to give you an idea of how the 2022 rookie class compares to the rookie running backs that have come out over the last 2 years. And as I mentioned, you might be surprised with how excited I am about it. But let's go here and start with the top of the class. And now for me, it is a 2-back race here for who is going to be the first running back off the board in your 2022 rookie drafts. But for me, right now, in this moment, Isaiah Spiller has a slight leg up on Iowa State's Breece Hall. Let's talk about why here. Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M is a very exciting back. He's smooth, methodical. There's pops of excitement throughout his tape. He displays solid vision, shows the ability to consistently read open gaps across the field, but does not always necessarily create his own space. He has clean footwork, great lateral movement. He has this subtle slipperiness to his game that's hard to quantify, but it is exciting and you absolutely can see it when watching his tape consistently. He finds a way to work past defensive backs and through linebackers. What I'm excited about for Isaiah Spiller's fantasy football potential is I believe he has the ability to be an effective goal line back at the next level. He possesses a great level of strength to his game. That strength comes with good contact balance as well. Defenders have a tough time wrapping him up, even in the SEC where tackling tends to be a little bit more sound. If you don't get him fully, he will slip by you. He has the strength to take on those linebackers head on. He scraps out extra yardage through the end of the play. Go on and flip on the Florida tape. You can see defenders absolutely bouncing off of him. Multiple broken tackles. He does really good after initial contact. I think Spiller works well in between the tackles. I think he works well outside of the tackles as well. When it comes to his athleticism, I see really clean footwork. He moves well in short space. He's got a really nice sidestep. Lots of quick lateral movements in his game. I know I said it earlier, but really emphasizing the smoothness of his running approach and some of that sneaky elusiveness. He's got some nice shake to his game, and it cannot be understated pass catching ability when it comes to looking at fantasy football running backs. Now, if you look at 2020 tape, you see he's not heavily targeted. However, in 2021, Texas A&M makes a point to target him, and it might have to do with that change in quarterback. They had a change in quarterback here that required that backup be able to have that check down option, and Spiller showed the ability to contribute. He pulled in off-target passes. He reacts well to underthrown balls when working downfield into that first level of the field off of the flat. And you could pretty much look at any of the tape. Look at the Alabama tape. Look at the Arkansas tape. He contributes to the passing game as well. So there's a lot to like when it comes to Isaiah Spiller. Now, rounding out that 1-2 conversation, which is where I think most folks are at right now, is Breece Hall. And you can see I have Breece Hall at a 7.8 RBBR, and I have Isaiah Spiller at a 7.9. They're very close together, and I will say I liked Breece Hall's 2021 tape more than his 2020 tape, so he actually did move up my rankings a good bit. Hall is a patient runner. He's an effective one-cut back that explodes well through space that's created for him. He's an athletic runner. He runs off tackle well. He shows a really nice, clean jump step. He can glide around the field at times. I understand why folks are really intoxicated by him and may want to have him as their running back one. shows good vision and recognizes when it's appropriate to cut back in reverse direction. Now, Hall is not going to be a burner by any means at the next level, but he does speed up well when running downhill and in a straight line. He's very explosive. He has good burst off the line of scrimmage and builds that momentum fairly quickly for a back of his size. Now, speaking of his size, that's my biggest knock on Breece Hall. I want to see him play bigger and play more along the lines of what his frame shows he should be able to do. I think he goes down a little bit too quickly after initial contact and is not as effective of a goal line back, again, as his size suggests he should be. So digging into it a little bit more, when it comes to his explosiveness, we're looking at good burst off the line of scrimmage. He hits holes hard. He closes space very quickly. He can burst through small holes and get solid gains out on the other side of things. When it comes to his vision, we see a very patient runner. He gives his offensive line time to open up holes for him. So it's going to be very important that we pay attention to where Breece Hall goes. If he goes to a bottom third offensive line in the league, it's probably going to be a quick pivot for me. If he goes behind a top half offensive line in the league, I think we can proceed with confidence when it comes to Breece Hall. Now, let's look at his speed here, because I mentioned he's not going to be confused with a burner, but he does speed up well running downhill. My speed score is more than just a 40 time, right? And when it comes to running in a straight line, he builds that momentum well, and he might not display the purest breakaway speed. If defensive backs work the right angle, they're going to get to him. But he does show the ability to beat defenders to the edge. He does show the ability to accelerate downfield. And so you look at that West Virginia tape, right? If you want to see an example of his ability to look at his ability to have a good breakaway, go and flip on the West Virginia 2021 tape. That's the best case scenario. But if you look at the Texas tape, look at the Baylor tape, you're going to see him consistently beat defenders to the edge. And that's going to be more of a consistent need for an NFL team than necessarily just that breakaway explosiveness. So that's the conversation right at the top, I think, for most folks. But Breece Hall versus Isaiah Spiller is not the only two running backs in my top tier. Now, they're a little bit of a drop down in the rookie big board, but they do also fall into what I call the weekly starter, which means they have the ability to be in that running back 2 to running back 3 range, somebody who you can consistently plug into your fantasy football range. Fantasy football lineups, I should say. So plugging into that along with Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall, we're going to start here with Kyren Williams, and I know you might be surprised. A lot of folks, I think, expected me to drop a different name, and don't worry, that will be coming next, but Kyren Williams slightly ekes out currently as my running back 3. Now, I know he's coming in at 5'9", just about 195, which is not the size that folks like. So we're going to have to wait and see what the NFL thinks. But if he gets that day 2 draft capital, and I think he has the ability to get drafted in the same range, if not higher than Kenneth Walker, which is the running back that I was alluding to, you might have thought I was going to mention next. If they get similar draft capital, I think Kyren Williams likely will be higher. Now, he's a 7'6" in the RBBR, which is lower than the first two guys, but still in a weekly starter range. When you look at Kyren Williams, he is a well-rounded back. I think I understand why some folks don't necessarily think he should be a tier 1 back, because there's nothing he does at an elite level, but he does everything at a really great level. And so if he can be in a situation where he gets volume, it's going to be very advantageous. He's a well-rounded back. I think he's got the potential for a long career in the NFL. He's an aggressive and physical runner. He stands his ground against some of the toughest defenses in the country. He displays great athleticism, very clean footwork. He navigates around the field with ease. Williams really understands when it's time to try and break off a big run and when it's time to put your head down and scrap out for a few yards. A very reliable pass catcher, and we will circle back to that. He is a willing and technically sound pass blocker, which nobody is ever interested in. But if you are a technically sound pass blocker, your opportunity to get on an NFL field early in your career as a running back significantly increases, and so that is one of the reasons I think Kyren Williams will be a day 2 selection, and I feel confident with that. Not the fastest back in the class, but he can accelerate downfield well in a straight line, sees the field very well, consistently gains yards after contact, operates really well in a phone booth, or otherwise known as being able to operate with good lateral agility in tight space. Now, let's go ahead and take a little bit deeper dive at some of his top traits here. Looking at his strength, aggressive and physical runner, I mentioned that. He throws a mean, stiff arm, all right? He does that against Alabama. He does that really consistently throughout his tape. He will scrap through the end of plays to get that extra yardage. All right, by the way, if you want to see that stiff arm, you can watch the Alabama tape. You can also flip on the Purdue tape or the USC tape from 2021. He throws it around a lot. He's got good contact balance. It's on full display in that Purdue game. He has a huge run after that initial contact. So again, Purdue 2021 if you want to watch that. Creating a ton of yards after contact. I know that's something that is very important for some fantasy football players. Somebody who I do think can be effective at the goal line despite his size. He is a very reliable pass catcher. All right, Notre Dame will go to him in the flat. They also will line him up as a wide receiver, split in. He is hyper-targeted as a check down option. No drops, nice hands consistently through his tape. If you flip on that Purdue tape, again, he'll catch a nice ball in tight coverage and actually finish that for a touchdown. So there's a lot to like about his pass-catching ability. Huge PPR upside here. One of the most important traits for me when it comes to assessing running backs is vision, and Kyren Williams sees the field well. He works very well through the B-gap, consistently recognizes which direction to cut into, recognizes well when to put his head down and just get what he can get out of a play. He can be a very patient runner. He can let the play develop. I think there's a ton to like about Kyren Williams. Moving on here to Kenneth Walker, who is just slightly behind, coming in at running back 4, and this will be the end of tier 1 for the running backs for me. It is going to be Kenneth Walker coming in at a 7.5 RBBR compared to the 7.6 RBBR there of Kyren Williams. Now, when you're looking at Kenneth Walker, you're looking at a high motor, explosive running back. He wins in a variety of ways. Pops off the line of scrimmage, displays the ability to cut upfield and hit a second gear, shreds through defenders when accelerating in a straight line. He's an aggressive and physical runner that displays really good lower body contact balance. He projects as an effective goal line in the NFL, goal line back in the NFL. You will see I have referred to all of these 3 top guys in that aspect because touchdowns are so critical to running back fantasy football success. He displays excellent field vision, finds gaps that seemingly do not exist, and understands well, again, when it's appropriate to cut outside and work off tackle instead of sitting into the tackle box. He's willing to lower his shoulder and take on a host of linebackers. All right, so when digging into his top traits a little bit more, we got to start with explosiveness. He has a ton of burst off the line of scrimmage, and he flips a second gear very well. Here's what I really like. He doesn't take plays off. That explosiveness off the line is consistent. It's throughout his tape, and that feeds into that high motor type player that I referenced earlier, and NFL teams like that. I see some pretty locked and loaded day 2 draft capital here for Kenneth Walker. He sees the field very well. He finds small gaps in the field. He explodes through them. He understands when to hit the A-gap, when to bounce outside, when to cut back. He's got pretty solid change of direction ability. There's a lot to like about his vision, and he is a strong back. He absorbs contact very well. He's willing to take on those linebackers. Fantastic lower body contact balance. All right, if defenders are diving at his legs, it's not going to get the job done. He's high motor. He finishes through the end of plays. Flip on the Miami tape if you want to see that contact balance, although you could almost apply that to any running back because Miami seriously does not know how to tackle, but that contact balance is on full display. So those are the top 4 guys. That's the top tier. 4 to 9 of the running backs that I wanted to break down. These are the guys that I'm going to compare them here to the 2020 and 2021 classes here in a moment. These are the guys that are going to compare to those impact players over the last couple of years. But as we know about running backs, there's always backs that pop up seemingly out of nowhere, but folks who are doing their research and paying attention will see the potential for those next tier of running backs here to come in and make an impact. So let's talk about the next 5 guys that I'm really excited about at the position as well. And you better believe it starts here with Zach Charbonnet. Now, Charbonnet is the first guy that fits into my flex filler tier. At a 6.9 RBBR, he is actually just below the weekly starter territory. Now, my flex fillers are the running backs who are going to live in that back-end running back 2, high-end running back 3, potentially into running back 4 territory, right? So guys that you can, put in those flex spots when you need them, as we all do, especially at this point in the season, right? So thinking ahead to who you might need to plug into your lineups moving forward as running back 30 through 40, right? 30 through 45. That's kind of what we're looking at, and certainly have the ability to have some weeks of higher upside. Now, Charbonnet, he transferred, remember, the UCLA back transferred from Michigan, where he had a great freshman season, highly touted 5-star recruit, great freshman season for the Wolverines, doesn't get used at all as a sophomore, transfers for UCLA, everybody forgets about him, and I will mention this, that I was very high on the transfer to UCLA. I told everybody to scoop him up in Devi. Nobody seemingly wanted to buy into that, and I will ride Zach Charbonnet's success here to a lot of fantasy football success because I have him in every Devi league, and I'm so happy about it. He's a dominant runner that overpowers Pac-12 defenses. He displays a high level of contact balance, often creating yards after initial contact, shoulders through linebackers to finish runs forward, great lower body strength, good burst off the line of scrimmage, the ability to shoot a gap, flip a second gear into the next level of the field, great downhill runner, great lateral agility, elusive in tight space. Now, he's not going to necessarily shake NFL defenders in open space. He's not necessarily going to always burn NFL DBs, but he will be a really productive guy at the next level. You look at that strength. He's a dominant runner that barrels over defenders, and you might say, yeah, he's playing in the Pac-12. That looks easy. Flip on the LSU tape. He's working through LSU defenders, displaying that great contact balance just the same. You could go back and flip on his freshman tape. He's doing it against Big 12 defenders. He is willing to throw his shoulder into any defender, finish the run. We're talking about a guy who can absolutely eat at the goal line. I think Zach Charbonnet's floor, his absolute floor as a fantasy football player, is somebody who absolutely drives you wild over the next couple of years because he vultures all your touchdowns from the back that you want to get the touchdown. That's his floor. I think he's going to have a higher ceiling than that. He has great explosiveness, tremendous burst off the line of scrimmage, shoots gaps well, hits the next level of the field, and his vision is absolutely there as well. Good vision, he's patient, he lets plays develop, he works really well running off tackle. There's a lot to like here about Zach Charbonnet, as you can certainly tell. Here's somebody that I don't want you to forget about, and that is Georgia's Zamir White. Now, Zamir White is a really dangerous combination of explosiveness and athleticism, and I need to explain why he falls into the flex filler tier for me right now. What goes into the RBBR this early is my projected draft capital and the projected opportunity that lines up with what I've found historically comes with that draft capital, right? And so that is factored into the RBBR. Right now, I have Zamir White as an early day 3 NFL selection, and it is for a very specific reason. Zamir White has suffered ACL tears in both his right knee in 2018 and his left knee in 2017. Now, you may be saying, like me as an optimist, well, it's been 3 years since he's had an ACL tear. You know, his knees are holding up. Yes, I think that is fantastic, and I'm a huge Zamir White fan because in terms of his pure talent that I'm about to describe, he is a tier 1 back and arguably the most talented back in this class in terms of pure talent. However, we have seen how previous knee injuries shorten the length of a player's career in the NFL, and you better believe NFL teams understand that as well. They're not going to be as willing to take that risk. So that needs to be the caveat thrown in here because what I'm about to explain to you is one of the most talented backs, if not the most talented back. We're looking at Zamir White, a 5-star recruit to Georgia, a running back factory. He navigates the field effortlessly between the tackles. Even when he's not presented with large gaps to work through, he's productive. Very sharp footwork and even sharper eye for the field. He finds ways to create his own yards on nearly every play. He hits that second level of the field with an extra gear, and he's got the speed to break off 40-plus yard touchdown runs. That just shows up consistently throughout his tape. An aggressive runner, he refuses to not finish forward on a play, and a technically sound blocker as well. Digging into his traits a little bit more, that contact balance is absolutely the foundation of his game. He fights for extra yards, always finishes forward. SEC defenders are not able to bring him down on the first hit. Great center of gravity, and it shows up really consistently. Go flip on the Clemson tape. Even against a really strong defense, he is able to hold up and play really well through that. His vision is fantastic. He's comfortable working between the tackles. He's comfortable working in very tight space. He sees the field well. He sees those gaps open, and he finds consistent success in that way. His athleticism comes with a dangerous, subtle elusiveness when working in between the tackles. You can tell I think Zamir White is best in between the tackle box here. A-gap, B-gap, uses very sharp footwork, very clean body movements to make defenders miss, very good lateral movements on Zamir White's tape. So a lot to like about Zamir White. However, I am projecting NFL draft capital and future opportunity into this as well. Jerome Ford, one of my guys that I have also been very, very high on, and I will say that. It's too early to victory lap, but I'm very happy with his success as a college football player, and I think the NFL is going to reward him with potentially late day 2 draft capital. Jerome Ford is a 4-star recruit who originally found himself in the Alabama running back room. Ford did transfer from Alabama to Cincinnati, and in limited opportunities in 2020, he looked absolutely fantastic, stuck there behind Jared Dokes for no apparent reason, and I knew coming into this season that he was going to prove that he deserved to be the starter and absolutely eat, and he has been an absolutely essential reason for the fact that the Bearcats made the college football playoff. Comes in at a 7.6 RBBR for me. He's a dynamic back that powers through opposing defenders, displays great strength, great contact balance, often creating yards after contact and dragging piles of defenders forward with him through the end of a play. He's a very effective goal line back. He does not speed up the quickest, but he does build momentum quickly as he gets through into the next level of the field. Great downfield acceleration, subtle shiftiness when working in tight space. He can have rounded cuts and be a little bit slow to change direction at times. His vision can be a little bit inconsistent, failing to consistently create his own space. I think he does rely on what an offensive line gives him. So again, another guy here, it's going to be really important to pay attention to the offensive line unit that he ends up behind. But he is a willing and technically sound pass blocker. He displays the ability to pick up opposing blitzers very well, and he's got a really strong anchor. He's a reliable pass catcher here. Digging into it a little bit more, when I mentioned his strength, great contact balance, flip on the Indiana tape. Again, so you're looking, you might say to yourself, well, who has Cincinnati played? You could flip on the Indiana tape, you can find this. You could flip on the Notre Dame tape, you can find this. Pushes the pile forward. When it comes to the goal line, when it comes to playing throughout the field, scrappiness is the key to his game. It's a great word to describe the way that he rushes. He's not afraid to put his head down and hit the A-gap hard. He consistently scores at the goal line. He's very successful for the Bearcats at the goal line. And you can see some excellent contact balance on display in the Central Florida, the UCF tape. In terms of pass catching, he's a really reliable pass catching option in the flat. You flip on the Tulane tape, you can see him work a really nice wheel route. Flip on the Navy tape, he runs a really nice angle route. So he's not going to be the most diverse route runner from the running back position, but he does enough to be a successful and consistent threat to opposing defenses. And I mentioned when it comes to speed, he's not necessarily going to tear up the 40 at the combine, right? So don't double count that against him. But you look at his straight line acceleration, my man can shoot the gap, he can scoot, and he will burn you in a straight line, building that momentum downfield. There's a ton to like about Jerome Ford. I will have him in as many places as I can get him. Now, a player I don't want folks to forget about here, and we're heading into our final 2 guys, and although they fall into the same tier, I do want you to think about these last 2 guys as a little bit differently here. All right, so White, Sharp, and Ford are kind of like a lot of my guys, the guys that have been really consistently there for me. But there's 2 more guys here that I just don't want you to forget about. And one is a guy who has maybe been in college longer than folks like, and one is a guy who may actually go back to college for another year. But let's go ahead and let's talk about Alabama's Brian Robinson Jr. It's easy to get lost of Brian Robinson because he's always just been a member of the backfield, right? Always just kind of been there, never been the back for Alabama. Even this year, Alabama didn't necessarily ride him as a workhorse back in the way they've done in the past with guys like Najee Harris, right? But when you look at Brian Robinson, there is a high level of explosiveness to his game. All right, he has the ability to burst through gaps. He comes right off the line of scrimmage, and it's consistently. He hits an even more explosive second gear once he builds that momentum. So you look at that 2021 tape, you have to be excited about it. And when you talk about his strength, we're talking about excellent lower body strength. He fights forward through the end of plays. He's an absolute bowling ball when running at full speed, shouldering through UF defenders. Flip on the 2021 tape. Look at him play Florida. Look at him play Miami. He's moving right past these defenders. And for a man of his size and his strength, he has sharp, clean cuts, good athleticism. He's really light on his feet. He's got a nice side step, very quick lateral movement. He works very well in tight space. I think this is the guy that's going to go higher in the NFL draft than a lot of folks think. He's going to be an afterthought for analytics folks who are not going to like the fact that he never technically had a breakout. I'm telling you, Brian Robinson is right up there with me. And the last guy on this list here, and this is no knock on him for being the last guy, I'm a big fan here of Zonovan Bam Knight out of North Carolina State. 6'6 RBBR. He falls into that flex filler range like all of these guys here I've talked about in this next tier. He's a dynamic back that could end up being one of the best values from the 2022 draft class. Speeds up quickly off the line of scrimmage. He maintains that speed well through his runs. Now he's quick to the edge, consistently wins when running off tackle. He's a twitchy and athletic runner. He's sharp into and out of his cuts, displays a high level of lateral agility. He's got a smoothness to his running style that allows him to shake defenders in tight and open space. His vision can be a bit inconsistent, and his vision is the number one knock on him. Because in my heart, Zonovan Knight is probably closer to a 6'9 or a 7'0 RBBR, but I couldn't ignore his inconsistent and his spotty vision. And that is why he's down here at the bottom of the list instead of being more in the middle of the list. But still, his athleticism cannot be ignored. He gets into cuts quickly. He's very twitchy. He's got a really nice juke move. If you put him in space, there's a good chance he's going to make a defender miss. He has an excellent sidestep. You flip on that South Florida tape. By the way, he plays on special teams. He returns kicks for North Carolina State, turns upfield, cuts really well on a dime. He's got good speed here. He speeds up quickly. He maintains that speed. It's interesting. Knight doesn't have a second gear, but he maintains and holds speed very consistently throughout his runs. And he does have the ability to be a reliable underneath option in the passing game. He's got a good concentration. He reacts well to the ball. So those are my top guys here when it comes to the top 9 players in the NFL draft, top 9 running backs at this point in time here in the NFL draft. But what I want to do now is be able to translate over here and show you exactly where I have these players projecting for fantasy football value compared to the past 2 draft classes, the 2021 running back class and the 2022 running back class. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up the rookie big board, and I'm actually going to give you some insight here onto what it looks like. Now, for those watching the video version of this, you can see the rookie big board, everything available at the $3 level at patreon.com/theFFeducator. You also have the ability now to do an annual membership and save 15%. By the way, that $3 level is also going to give you access to our really fantastic Discord community. I think it's a great value, and I encourage you to check it out because not only do you get the 2022, 2021, and all-time rookie big boards, you get access to Devian Dynasty and Cornerstone rankings as well. But let's really lock into here where these running backs line up here in the last couple classes. Now, coming off the top, the 2021 class, Najee Harris was my highest projection at an 8.5 RBBR. And then, of course, that 2020 class, in order, DeAndre Swift at 8.1, and Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor both came in at 8. Now, as a reminder, in the all-time rookie big board, what I'm showing you is their RBBR immediately post-draft. Now, so that does include the fantasy football projection for the season that they were drafted, and also their long-term value projection for me. So, what usually happens is that when these players get drafted, they take a slight dip in RBBR. But coming in just under Jonathan Taylor is Isaiah Spiller at 7.9. Now, it is a different tier. Najee Harris is the only one in the franchise cornerstone tier for me, which is a locked and loaded positional 1, right? An RB1. And then DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, and Jonathan Taylor were all guys I projected as a low-end running back 1s to running back 2s. That's my league winner. And weekly starter, again, is more in that running back 2, mid running back 2, early running back 3 range. And so right under Jonathan Taylor comes both Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall, and they split where I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think that is probably the best way to conceptualize where I think the top of this running back class will be. It will be in between Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I know folks right now are very excited about Jonathan Taylor because he is performing very well. So you may even want to conceptualize it more as Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall's value is going to land somewhere in between J.K. Dobbins and Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me. Just under Clyde Edwards-Helaire is Travis Etienne and Cam Akers at 7-6. And that is where Kyren Williams and Kenneth Walker fall in. And you'll see here, I'm actually a little bit lower on Javonte Williams. I have been really consistently. Javonte Williams has risen up in the adjusted rookie big board rankings. Obviously, as some of the other guys have underperformed going into the season. But if you want to look at where I have Kyren Williams and Kenneth Walker right now, it's in between Cam Akers and Javonte Walker. Now, that's the top tier of guys I mentioned. So let's move down a little bit here. And one of the reasons that I like to show this for those watching the video version of this episode is you can see I have my misses out here in the open. I have Zach Moss and Keyshawn Vaughn at 7 threes. That isn't exactly lined up. But what you instead hopefully are paying a little bit more attention to is the fact that I have Zach Charbonnet at a 6'9". I think it's interesting that he's actually lined up very well with where I had A.J. Dillon at a 6'8". I think it's similar skill sets here between those two type of big backs, liking Zach Charbonnet just a little bit more. So it goes Charbonnet, A.J. Dillon, then Jerome Ford, then Zamir White, then Trey Sermon. Now remember, Trey Sermon got a big bump when we thought that Sermon was going to be the back eating there for San Francisco. Then it goes Demetric Felton, who was a guy that I was really high on, Zonovan Knight, Brian Robinson Jr., then Michael Carter here. So if we're thinking about where that bottom tier of guys comes, in terms of where their value may be coming into rookie drafts, maybe somewhere in the range of where Michael Carter and Trey Sermon were going here, which is second round rookie picks. Now, certainly these guys are going to move around a little bit here over the course of the next few months, and landing spot will be a huge reason that folks either choose to draft them or not to draft them. But that gives you a little bit of an idea of right now, in this moment, where I value this running back class compared to the last 2 years. And as I mentioned at the start of this episode, I think it gives you good reason to be a little peeved here if you bought into this narrative of the 2022 running back class not being good. There's plenty of talent in this running back class. I've been saying this all along. Hopefully you've been buying those rookie picks, and if you haven't been, you're going to be a little late. You're going to have to slightly overpay, but go buy those picks now, because the closer and closer we get to the draft, the more you're going to overpay for those picks, right? So if you need a running back, you don't have to fade this year's draft class necessarily. There will be value. Folks will get even more excited. These guys will get driven up in rookie draft ADP value. So now is the time to go ahead and do that, and hopefully this preview here of the top 9 running backs in the draft class compared to the running backs in the 2021 and 22 class help give you an idea of that. If you want to dig more into the value of these guys as they progress throughout the season, I highly encourage you, check out patreon.com/theFFeducator. Get in, try it out at the $3 level per month, save 15% with the annual pass, and you get the access to the Discord channel as part of that. And that's the key, that's the clutch thing. So you can be in there chopping it up and talking with us about these values as they progress, as news breaks, as we head towards the NFL draft and combine season and Senior Bowl and all of that good stuff. I appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big